Welcome to the MS Dev Show, episode number 124. This week we talk with Morten Nielsen about mapping and geospatial, the latest announcements from Ignite, Azure price cuts, and Samsung experiences explosive sales.
This episode of the MS Dev Show is brought to you by Infragistics, providing tools and solutions to accelerate design, development, insights, and collaboration for any organization.
This week we have Morten Nielsen, Microsoft MVP for Windows development. His main focus is API and Xamarin Control development, and he works for Azure building mapping controls for .NET and Xamarin. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. So, Carl, what's going on? We just jumping in the Infragistics Ultimate Winner of the Week?
Yeah, before that, I will have to say that this coming next week, I'm actually giving two totally different presentations. One in Appleton at the Technology Hub Conference. I'll be talking about IoT. And then 2 days later on Saturday at Milwaukee Code Camp, I will be talking about UWP development.
Excellent.
So if you're going to be in the area of either one of those, come on down. I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, if you can't get enough Carl, go see him in person. And remember, he's just always surrounded with swag, so you'll get stickers.
Always.
And all that stuff. Yeah. Very cool. So who is our Infragistics Ultimate Winner of the Week?
This week it went to Darren Grayson, who contacted us on Twitter. In fact, it was yesterday he reached out to us. We had taken last week off, and we put a little reminder on Twitter so people wouldn't freak out. But apparently he thought his podcast app was broken because he didn't see it. So he reached out to us on Twitter and realized that we had put out that notification. And then, I just said, hey, we try to give out notifications when stuff like this happens. And he says, your output is prodigious and consistently good quality, so we can't deny you the odd break. My panic is over.
Excellent.
So I just like that a lot. So because of that, Darren, you win this week's Infragistics Ultimate License. And if you would like to get mentioned on the show, like Darren, send us an email to feedback@msdevshow.com. Comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Stitcher. We really like those 5-star iTunes reviews.
Yeah, we'll have to check out those 5-star iTunes reviews again to see if anybody new has put one out there. So that's what I'll be looking for. So go out there and make sure you leave us a review. That really helps us out. Okay, so news. What are we going in here? What's the first thing?
So the first thing is a question that we put out there as a Twitter poll.
Yep.
We wanted to see, Jason and I were thinking of ways to expand the show. We're like, how about a newsletter? So we put 3 options. No, I get enough spam. Yes, more content monthly, or yes, quarterly at most. And when you add up both of the yeses, the no's win 58 to 42%. So it saves me and Jason a bit of work, and we don't spam you guys. So
Did you
we
vote,
do
Carl?
want to listen to you guys.
Did you
I
vote?
voted.
I voted too. I said,
All
no,
right.
I get enough spam. Plus, it'd be weird just sending email to myself. So, yeah.
No, but we're coming up with a few ideas to improve the show. Some of them we'll ask a few questions about. Some of them are just going to happen. So this is just one of the ways that we're reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
Although we did get a comment on there by Colin Wynn, a previous winner, I believe. He says, no, your podcast and show notes cover more than enough to not warrant the need. So there are a few people who gave their additional comments as well.
Perfect. Okay, so next up is Microsoft Ignite. So this took place last week, which of course, some of these big conferences are always like kind of the big bang releases for a whole bunch of different features. And some features that get announced around that or before that all get grouped in here. But there's basically what we'll do in the show notes is we're going to link to this mega post that covers everything. I used to do this in the past, but this is right on the TechNet site, and they did an amazing job of consolidating this. So there's really no reason for me to do anything. I was just going to call out a couple of things that people might be interested in. The first one being that Windows Server 2016 is now GA. So it's now available, so generally available. So if you want to go start testing your software on that, you can go do that. That's a pretty exciting release because it's been a few years since the last version of Windows Server. What else we got here? Azure Stack. Now there is technical preview 2. So Azure Stack is basically the version of Azure that you can install, on your own machines so that you can run Azure services locally. So you can play with the latest on that. Azure Disk Encryption. So this is all generally available. This is a pretty cool feature. So it's basically using BitLocker and Linux disk encryption to encrypt your VM disks in Azure using a key, which is a pretty cool feature. There's a lot of customers and partners that have this as a requirement, so it's great having this. Azure DNS, which we've talked about before, is now generally available. Let's see, storage encryption, which is different from disk encryption. So disk encryption is actually the disks attached to a VM, but the storage encryption, that's basically anything you store in blob storage, which pretty much powers like everything that you store in Azure. Any kind of services that store anything are generally built on top of that. And now you could always encrypt from the client, but now it'll actually do server-side encryption of that data. Let's see here. A couple new machine series have come out, which is really great, basically expanding the SKUs available. So the new one is the H series, which is pretty neat. So it's a Haswell processor. There's 2 different sizes. Actually, there's a couple different sizes, but they're 8 and 16 core varieties. They have DD4 memory, local SSD, RDMA. So basically like super powerful machines, great for specific workloads. And then there's just things like accelerated NICs. There's performance enhancements on a couple different things here. VNet peering, which is kind of neat. If you have a virtual network in two different regions, you can now peer those so that you can send traffic, essentially privately between those without having to exit the data center and pay those kinds of fees. So making those 2 virtual networks essentially be able to talk to each other directly. Service Fabric, a topic we've talked about on the show before, is now generally, the Linux preview is generally available. Actually, the Linux preview, I think that's preview. The Service Fabric for Windows Server is what is generally available. So actually running it on a local machine. Event Hubs, another topic we've talked about on the show. They added a feature called Archival, where you can actually have Event Hubs save data out to storage automatically for you and handle all that, which is very cool. So those, kind of looking through those were the big announcements. But if there's a product that you care about, hit up the link in our show notes and go out there and see if there's an announcement around what you're interested in. So I don't know if there was anything, Carl, that you pulled out of there that you wanted to mention.
Well, it's not really that I wanted to mention, but I until I saw this list, I wasn't aware of that Event Hub's archival feature, because that's actually something that I've done manually before.
Yeah.
Where I create my own output in off of Stream Analytics.
Yep.
To redirect it into storage, and it looks like that's just going to save you a couple of steps and potentially even some money, since that's a little bit more baked in now.
Yeah, Stream Analytics was always the trick, right? Like it knew how to write out to storage, so you would wire in Stream Analytics and just have the data pass through there, and it would store it for you. So yeah, you're right. It's just a little bit less costly now, and just quicker and easier to configure. Okay, Microsoft cuts Azure VM prices by up to 50%. What? How am I going to get paid, Carl?
You got to just do twice as much, Jason.
Okay, I'll just crank up the work. So let's see here. DV2 VM prices are dropping by as much as 15%. Not a huge drop there. Well, that's still significant though, because customers could be spending thousands of dollars for VMs. What's interesting though is A1 and A2 basic VMs are dropping by as much as 50%. Compute optimized F series VM prices are going to drop as much as 11%. And then there's going to be AV2. And just so you know, if you're not completely familiar with Azure, whenever you see this series, but you see, like AV2, it's basically Series A version 2 is what they're referring to. So AV2 series VMs will become available next month. It will cost as much as 36% less than the A series standard VMs. And what's cool, whenever they do that, like whenever they came out with DV2, I think across the board, the DV2 machines were the same price as the version 1. It's just how they roll out, the next generation of processors. So you essentially get the latest and greatest without any increase in cost, which is really cool. Okay, now you can include a live code demo in OneNote. What is this, Carl? This is like wizardry in my OneNote here.
Yeah, so just so those at home and listening are aware, we do all of our show notes in OneNote. So
Yep.
I have one embedded right now. So there's this service called Replit, REPL.IT, and you can pick a bunch of different languages, and in the browser you can code and execute it. Now, OneNote has added support for this. So if you create a share link out and just paste that share link into OneNote, now it'll actually embed that little bit of an environment into your OneNote now. So right now there's just a little bit of code that's in C# console.writeline MSDev show for life. And when we run it, a little console pops up and you see the output as MSDev show for life. So
yeah, it's like the code is like running in OneNote, even though I know it actually isn't, but like it is.
and how they marketed it is, I think the title of the article is now teachers can include live demos in OneNote. So apparently there's groups of teachers that use OneNote to display things to their students. And now that they can actually write code live through this browser integration into OneNote. So I think this is really cool.
It's super cool. Okay, and then the next one here, which is seems to pertain to today's conversation, announcing ArcGIS maps for Power BI by Esri. What? Okay, so so now you can basically take the awesome maps that Esri creates and embed those into Power BI. So there was a mapping control is a mapping control in Power BI, but now you can basically supercharge that by including the Esri map, which is cool. So hopefully the reasons for that become clear too as we start talking about the power of mapping and Esri on this show. Any other comments on that one, Carl?
No, it's just I know that we're really ramping up a lot of Power BI work where I am, and I know that mapping had just come up, so this is really timely for the work that I'll be doing.
Absolutely. Google, if you support Amazon's Echo, you're cut off from Google Home and Chromecast. What's the deal here? This is really strange.
Yeah, so if you are a developer or a service that is integrating with Amazon Echo, Google is cutting you off, not letting you into their new Google Home and Chromecast products. So to me, this is kind of scary, you know?
Yeah. So I guess the point is that they're trying to get like Echo developers or people that are thinking about developing for it to be like, oh, I gotta pick, and I'm gonna pick the Google one. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's exactly the idea.
That's crazy though. That's just mean.
I was shocked when I saw it.
What happened to Don't Do Evil? Like, this is like directly evil.
Remember they dropped that a while ago?
I know.
They just dropped their
But this is like textbook evil.
It's almost like if you have a light bulb and the light socket and the wire and the switch all have to be the same brand, then will we have very many light bulbs in our house? Like it's really vendor lock in like crazy. That's scary. Like,
well, if light bulbs are a new invention, I'm afraid that's probably what would happen.
Exactly.
I mean, that's happened with like HDMI content protection and that, but this is, I don't know, man, you're evil, Google. As I'm sitting here using Chrome. I don't know. It's just kind of ridiculous. So we'll have to see how that plays out, how that actually happens in reality.
Well, all I know is if this would have happened late 90s Microsoft era, I mean, that's the kind of things that led to, a lot of those court decisions against Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly. This next one is scary. So I was flying this day, and I had read this story and it kind of freaked me out. So it was just funny because Carl is the one that included this news story. But replacement Samsung Galaxy Note 7 catches on fire on Southwest Plains. So to be clear, well, actually, maybe I should back up. The Note 7s, like a good percentage of them were exploding. It was a flaw in the battery. So they've been replacing these things for free. Samsung, a lot of people are saying they've done the right thing. And so they take the one that is exploding and they give you one that is non-exploding. So this non-exploding one exploded on a plane. And I think Samsung is like, oh, crap. So I don't know. And then they have this whole washing machine issue too. Have you seen that? They have exploding washing machines. So I don't
So
know.
they're really an explosives company.
Yeah, yeah, they're trying to pivot.
They're doing good.
Yeah, they're doing pretty good.
Sales are exploding.
Yeah, sales are
Yeah.
exploding. I don't know. I feel kind of bad because obviously they're not trying to do this. I don't know if this is just like poor quality control or what the deal is. I mean, I feel like this could have happened to anybody. I don't know if they specifically did something wrong that makes it so that they were more prone to this. I don't know. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt the company. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Well, and even though that, none of Microsoft's, batteries have exploded either, there was that, battery problem with the Surface Pro 3s. And it just really goes to show you there is a lot of energy in, modern lithium batteries, and things like this can happen. So hopefully we get a little bit more revolution in some of the safety of these devices going forward.
Yeah, it's crazy because everybody's asking for like even 10x the battery density of what we have today. And just think about that. I mean, it's almost like having, this is probably a horrible analogy, but it's like having a nuclear bomb in your pocket, And I know
Nuclear
that,
batteries.
what was that?
Yeah, nuclear batteries. That's what we need.
Yeah.
That'll last.
Yeah. And I know we're still like, orders of magnitude from like nuclear, but still like just the pure energy densities are just getting insane. I mean, it's amazing. Like you take my phone and like how it can play video for like 10 hours or something with that screen, like keeping that thing warm. And if you play a game, the thing obviously heats up a lot. It's just crazy how much heat energy or mechanical energy or whatever is actually present in that, to your point, Carl. And I don't know, when we start going 10x that, maybe there's like a secret society like holding that back, because it's when those things explode, like it'll just kill you, or I don't know, we'll have to see. The advancements in batteries might really be held back by what happens when they do. I guess their reaction to I don't want to say exploding, but their reaction to being shorted out or whatever it is. Like, is it like a chain reaction, or is it only like one small thing that happens? Because I know like the Tesla cars, like they have individual cells that are isolated, and then they can basically separate that from the rest of the thing. But I think they put some kind of gel or something in there. I don't know. I'm probably explaining completely wrong, but they basically use like isolation so that the chain reaction doesn't happen. So, if we can do that at a lower level, that's great. But, I don't know if this is gonna be one of those things where the safety will lag way behind the actual energy density, and then things are just going to keep getting more and more scary. And then they're going to start banning them from planes, which I don't know. Then what are we going to do? Maybe they'll have like concrete boxes where everybody puts their phone in, and then probably a bad idea to put them all together, but some kind of safe boxes, and then you can't use your phone on the plane.
Whatever happened to the hydrogen batteries anyway? Wasn't that a whole thing a few years ago?
Oh, there's new battery technology every week, man. I don't know.
I mean, there's something that could be an exploding battery.
You talking about like a hydrogen fuel cell?
Yeah.
Yeah. They just, I don't think the density has been there. It hasn't been that great. I don't know. And then there's been super capacitors, and I just ignore every battery advancement thing. And it was funny because I even, this was somebody that we knew, Carl. I won't mention her name, but she was a lawyer, and I was talking to her, and she was talking about this work she had done at a different company, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you wouldn't believe the battery technology they have." And I said, No, I don't believe it. I'm like, it's just complete crap. I'm like, it's never going to hit the market. And here we are, like, like the timeline that she was talking about, like it should be on the market as of years ago. So I was right. Never happened. Battery technology advances by a small percentage every year, and we haven't really found any big shortcuts as of yet, but I want to be proven wrong on that one. What's this next one, Carl? I see some video of a coffee machine or something.
So I thought you put that in there.
Really?
But either way, so we'll talk about it anyways. It got brought up, even though neither of us put it in there, apparently. So this week in caffeine, Ryan Laudermilk, some of you might know him from the Windows Developer Show, had put out this little tempted wish list thing that he had on Amazon. It was all coffee gear. And so I responded back to him like, you'll love the AeroPress, but he had put like this hand crank burr grinder on there. I said, you might want to upgrade to a manual one. So he found this YouTube video that showed this lady comparing like grinding it yourself and getting just a tiny amount of coffee versus like blasting through grinding coffee on it on your own. And just as a note, I started off with one of the manual grinders. It took me 7 minutes of grinding just to get a day's worth of grinding.
Fun. Especially in the morning,
you're
like half asleep and you're sitting there like, it's just horrible. I have one too. I have a manual grinder. I used it for a week and then I bought an automatic one.
It would be great if you went camping, but yeah, don't do it on your own.
That'd still be horrible. That's hilarious though that this just random video. Ryan Loudermilk, get out of our OneNote. Stop. We need to.
He just wanted the mention.
We need to check the permissions. Anyway, let's bring it back to a serious note here. Let's talk about mapping and mapping related stuff. So I guess let's just start. I love this first question that we came up with here. Mapping seems hard. How does it work? How do it work?
How does it work? Well, it runs on coffee, so there you go.
Manual or motor driven?
Manual.
Okay.
All manual. Yeah.
Mapping is like manual grinding. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Well, how does it work? Well, it does work. So that's yeah. Well, I think mapping is, some people I think is a little like mapping is hard, but it really isn't. I think it's just a matter of mindset and getting over a couple of hurdles. Like, I think a way of thinking of mapping is it's kind of like charting, like a bar chart, but it's just a little more data you want to show than that. And in fact, people call maps for charts too. So it's kind of what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
But I guess one of the challenges in mapping is getting your head around is that the world is not flat, but all our maps seems to be. And that does cause some initial getting your head around things like longitude, latitude is that's not something that just goes right and up, or that's the spherical coordinates and goes around, and when you get to 180, it suddenly becomes minus 180. Yeah, and that's actually the same value. So you get challenges like that. Like how do you 10 degrees east at the North Pole is also 10 degrees west at the North Pole. It's the same point. So.
That's interesting.
The point doesn't even make sense, Phil, because it's really a single point at the North Pole.
Well, have you heard this about Alaska? That I've heard that it's the northmost state, it's the westernmost state, and it's the easternmost state.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, because it ends up crossing. I don't know. I can't remember why, but I can't remember if it crosses around the.
It crosses the 180 degree.
Is that why? Yeah. So it ends up being. Basically loops around. Yeah, it's like unsigned or signed. It's like a signed value,
right? So yeah, that the whole fact that everything is round but we map it flat, that causes some challenge. Like, how do you make the surface of a sphere into a flat map? And there's many ways you can do that, almost an infinite number of ways.
Yeah. It's funny,
and they all have different ways that have different properties. The simplest one is just say, well, my longitude, that's in my map my x coordinate, and my latitude I've pretend as y coordinate. That squishes the poles kind of down to become like all stretched and weirdly shaped. Yeah. But it's really simple and really fast. Most of the online maps are using what's called a Mercator projection, and that actually does the opposite. It makes the poles infinitely far away. So the more you go north, the larger everything becomes. And then, of course, you can't even show the North Pole because it's infinitely far away. So almost all the maps, like Bing Maps, Google Maps, OpenStreetMap, our standard maps, even like they cut off at 85 degrees north and south. So if you want to show polar ice caps and the ice melting, that's not really the map to use.
Okay. And if I want to take a trip there, like I'm just not going to get good directions.
Stop before you fall off the edge.
Yeah. So the Earth is flat. Just admit it.
Sure, it's flat. Sometimes I think it might be easier to take bulldozers and make the Earth flat than having to deal with the Earth being round all the time.
Yeah, that'd probably be a lot of work. So we should probably talk about like definitions and stuff like that. Like I hear terms like, well, we did talk about latitude and longitude. I think most people know what those are, but then I hear terms like geospatial. I don't know if there's any other common words that get thrown around. Like, can you help define some of those things? Like the first one being geospatial.
Well, geospatial is Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, probably easy to define it. Like one of the bigger concepts we talk about is GIS,
Hmm.
which means Geographic Information System. So, and that to make it really simple, it's just a database with an extra column that has a point, line, or a polygon that kind of defines for this area, the row. That's what this row represents. It's a specific area and has various properties like population or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, so when we talk about geospatial, it just really talks about shapes on the world, like it's
Okay.
on geographic scale. So it's spatially because it's kind of almost like trigonometry or like various shapes and in a coordinate system, and then geo just means we do it on the Earth.
Okay.
Uh, that's probably the geospatial and GIS are some of the bigger things. Like so, basically information about the world and places and locations.
Okay.
Uh,
Cool.
and then analyzing those, of course, and how they actually relate. Things that are nearby each other quite often have similar properties. Like the population often speaks the same language, have similar culture. You might have
Hmm.
similar types of disease outbreaks or similar things. So being able to analyze things, how they relate to each other spatially, can often reveal some patterns that you otherwise wouldn't have seen.
Yeah, you brought up a good point there, was that, we need to be able to do things like distance between different latitudes and longitudes. And it's not just a matter of like subtracting the two, right? Like you actually there's like a formula to figure out what the distance is because of that Mercator projection that you were talking about.
Right. So if you were to put a point on in Alaska, for that matter,
Yeah.
and Russia, and you have maybe negative 107 degrees or 107 degrees west,
Mm.
and then 107 degrees east. And if you were to draw on a flat mat, it would go the long way around. But really, the shortest is the other way, and maybe a little bit over the pole too, because
I never even thought
so
of that there's two different ways to get between any 2 points. Actually, there's infinite, but I guess
infinite. Yeah.
there's yeah, that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
So on these maps, the shortest route is never a straight line. Well, it is a straight line, but on
Yeah.
these maps, it distorts the whole what a straight line looks like, and that's one
Right.
of the problems with making the map flat. Um, so that causes some confusion too because it looks like it's the long way around. Another example is you want to show a circle like a 10-mile radius around an area. In certain locations the circle looks like an ellipse, and I've heard before people were like, but that's not a circle. I wanted a circle. It's like, but it is a circle. It's just because of the map, how it's squished flat, it squeezes it. So we had to come up with custom projections that basically was centered on that location and then squished the rest of the map. So the distortion error is so small you couldn't actually see the difference.
Hmm.
Just for the person who actually want to see circles and not ellipses, even though
Yeah.
they technically were. So it can also convey the wrong thing when you don't see a straight line. Um,
Okay. Well, this is how Kirk beat Khan in Star Trek 2, so that type of thinking. Go ahead, Carl.
So what kind of solutions do maps make easier to solve when we start using them with technology?
well, it kind of almost touched it a little bit, like how things are relating to each other, correlating based on the location. Classic example is that you might have a bunch of patients with a certain type of, like, we have lung cancer, for instance. And so all these lung cancer patients, you can take their location and put them on, like, where do they live, and put them on as dots on a map. And then you could start overlaying that with various types of air pollution, for instance. And you might start seeing a trend that, well, when we have a high concentration of this pollution, we also have a high concentration of this type of lung cancer. So maybe there's something here we need to look at. So it can also help you give some correlation that you wouldn't have seen in a normal table because it would just have been addresses and you've not been able to actually make that distinction.
Yeah.
So that's one of the huge benefits you could do there. But almost all companies today use it also for all sorts of analysis, like customer base. So which kind of people live in my area? Are they, for instance, mainly listen to radio? Are they high income, low income? Like, how should I promote my company in this area? Are there certain areas where I sell better than others? Why is that? What kind of population are in my area or location? Or am I too far from certain things? How many lives in for a 10-minute radius of driving? But it's just a 10 minutes or a 10-mile radius that can be very different based on freeways can push that limit out further. So you can use routing and stuff to actually figure out that. So you can do much more detailed analysis than that. And that's some of the stuff that Power BI also helps you do, where you can bring in some of this authoritative data that can tell you some more information about about the area that you're in, and then actually derive some other conclusions that have always been impossible to do just from a bar chart or from a normal table.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of really cool visualizations where they combine a map with like a 3D bar chart. You know,
Mm.
because humans are very visual, and having that map and then being able to show those bars on there makes it really quick and easy to
Mhm.
see, like, this is, you know, these power plants are higher capacity, or this is a larger population, or, you know, Seattle gets more rain than, you know, whatever. So those are always really cool, and they make for really good demos.
Right, and I mean, we have all sorts of fancy algorithms to calculate correlated values between spatial location and other properties. Sometimes just putting a set of customers or a set of incidents on your map can instantly, you can just look at it and say, oh, over here there's a problem, over here we're not covering, or just from visually you can very, very quickly see things on that you might want to correct.
Okay.
Um,
Infragistics' ultimate UX and UI tools and enterprise mobility solutions, SharePlus and ReportPlus, enable high-performance apps on any device, faster data insights, simplified collaboration, and market-leading security, all backed by comprehensive support. With Infragistics' ultimate UX and UI development toolkit, you can ensure mission-critical applications delivering a superior user experience on the desktop, web, and native device environments for iOS and Android. With the latest BI tools, wow your users with dashboards providing the data insights that they need when and where they need it, all at a low total cost of ownership. Try it today. Download a free trial at Infragistics.com and follow them for the latest updates in UX and UI development, reporting, and collaboration at Infragistics on Twitter. And remember, each week, if we pick your comment on the show, you will get a free copy of Infragistics' Ultimate UX and UI toolset.
So I've used a lot of different mapping APIs, and I'm just kind of curious how easy it is to switch between them, or you know, kind of what your experience is there. Because there's like Google Street Map, there's Google, there's Bing Maps, and you know, I can either pick one and I can hit against that API, but you know, like actually switching between them, do they have kind of all the same semantic definitions? Like, you know, how easy is that? What does that look like?
well, I think all of them pretty much have a JavaScript API, but
Mm-hmm.
they're all their own JavaScript APIs. So
Yeah.
you of course have to learn things a little bit different. All of them uses the longitude latitude typically. Of course, there's multiple types of longitude latitudes, but the one they usually is called WS84, which is generally what you get from a GPS,
Okay.
and that's like a good model of the world worldwide. There's better models you can use for the shape of the Earth for local areas, which generally they don't support. So that's generally how those things work. Most of them use this Mercator projection I talked about
Yep.
that cuts off at the poles. So a lot of that stuff is the same. They often look the same. They often have the same set of features, like you can have aerial view or street view, and it's for the most part some dots on the map you can throw in. A place where we kind of differ is we don't have to do Mercator. That's one of the standard ones you just get to begin with, but it can be anything and it can be any data. A lot of them also have, like for instance, Google and Bing Maps, they have their map, and then you can put stuff on top. But what if you don't want to use that map but something else? That can get a little trickier sometimes. So that's where the difference is. If you don't really need that, you just need to put some dots on the map. They're all fairly straightforward to use, and they can all do it. And I think moving from one to the other is different. I guess the real difference starts coming if you don't want to do JavaScript. If you're a .NET developer, for instance, like, well, what are my options then? I know Xamarin Forms has kind of made a little bit of an abstract control of the different platforms. You have Android and iOS and Windows. They're all different map controls. They try abstract that a little bit away. And if you're a UWP developer, there's the map control API namespaces that provide something similar to what you have in the JavaScript API, of course, but just through .NET with some of the limitations as well. They have improved over the time. And again, like we also have APIs that runs on pretty much any platform you can think of. So yeah.
So as Esri is a little bit more of a premier, has a more premier offering than OpenStreetMap or Google and Bing in this case, what kind of things do you offer that those other types of services don't?
first of all, I think you provide quite a lot more data. We have quite a lot of different maps to use as as a starting point for you. One of the things I like to say, like if you take an aerial map, like because it looks cool, you have all the aerial image data and it looks real, and you put your data on top. The aerial data has so much information in it, and it almost distracts from what you're trying to show. So having just a plain, almost gray map, it just kind of gives you a reference where you're at, maybe a couple of major cities, but faded out. That actually gives you a really good experience, and that's some of the maps we have out of the box, so we can really focus on your data. But also, some of the things we provide is we allow you to author and manage and publish your own data for all the way through, but all of the data, including the base map. Often, for instance, government have their own data for their location, so they can better optimize for. We also do routing against your own route data set. An example is emergency vehicles. They have different rules. Like normal network data set might say that on average this intersection takes this long to get through because you on average have to wait this long for a red light. So it optimizes based on that. But when you're in an emergency vehicle, you can turn your lights on and then everything changes. Now they might just slow down a little bit. So they change the whole thing. They might have fire roads they can drive on. So being able for them to use their own routing data sets. Some of the stuff we provide the tools for creating them and managing them, but also for using them and on your devices as well.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of municipalities that have maps where you can go out and like overlay, here's what it looked like in like 1960, here's what the land plots were, those types of things. I'm guessing they're using your technology.
Quite often, yeah, that would be the case, yeah.
Okay.
And generally, like we have a whole system of it, so it's not just rendering maps, but also managing, maintaining, have server backends to maintain all the data and keep it up to date. Mobile devices, we can sync stuff. So if you are not relying on a secure or a consistent connection in the field, like you might be in a place with poor connection, you can take your data offline and you can actually edit the data in the field and then sync with the server when you get a connection, or also get changes that have been made by other people and only updated the deltas. So it's definitely some of the stuff for field workers we focus a lot on. Also for offline, basically going offline is a big deal for us, especially for field people, but also the whole back office piece to it.
Absolutely. You don't want to just all of a sudden not have your tools with you.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess, another thing is the whole analysis part. So if you have these whole things where you can set up models, actually kind of drag and drop tools that performs the whole analysis and gives you results out of it based on an input. One of the fun ones I have I like that one, is it has all the currents in the oceans, and you can then click on a map and say, if I drop a water bottle here, what would go over the next year? And you can kind of see where it kind of goes through all the oceans. It's kind of neat, but that's really, so you can build up models like that and do these type of calculations.
Okay, well, that's really cool. So I run into this problem a lot where I have a database full of addresses, and I want to geocode those. So I want to get the latitude and longitude for those addresses, and historically that's just been a major issue, because like every time I try to use, like, of course I always try to use a free solution, you know, I'll send them to like Bing or Google, and right away they throttle you, and it's like, oh, you've asked for more than 2 of these, so you know, no more today. But anyway, so how do I go about doing that if I have, you know, this huge database of addresses and I want to geocode it?
Well, you can actually use Power BI as one of the functionalities for it. Okay. So if you use the UWP, they actually have, I think it's called Map Location Finder.
Okay.
In their API, it has it built in. But you're right, there are limits on these, and there's I think you are using some of your tokens. There's a limit, or you can end up paying for extra for geocodes. So geocodes like process go. You can either go from an address to a location on the map, or from a location on the map to an address, right?
Yeah.
We all do that when we click on the map. It gives you the address of it. That's reverse geocode, right?
Yeah, because I pretty much have to use a service, right? There's really no getting around that, because if I'm not using a service, then I could potentially be using out of date information then.
True. Yeah. So we actually do provide here also for our tools to generate these tools that can do. So if you have your own authority data, but we had the last one we did a geocode for the entire world in a single 15 gig, I think it was 15 or 14 gigabyte file that you could take on your mobile device. Yeah, it's a fairly large file, but it worked for the entire world. And because it ran on the device without a service, we could do it as quickly as you can move the mouse over. So as you're moving your mouse, it shows the address of that location.
Okay.
which is really cool. So there is ways to go these offline, have huge amounts to actually do it offline. For online, you're right. There's quite often that cost when you hit a certain limit. But pretty much all the map providers provide something. We have something. Bing Maps has something. Google has something as well.
Yeah, it does. It does sound like, going back to what we were talking about earlier. It does sound like I start using a map. If I just want to display some points on map, like pretty much anybody can do that. But pretty quickly, I'm gonna hit this limit. I'm gonna want to do something just a little bit more advanced, and it's probably it's gonna be like some kind of business function. It sounds like at that point, that's when I need to start talking to you guys.
Yeah, so we start doing what we call batch geocoding, because you have a whole set of them. You basically want to upload a file and get them all down again. That pretty much all the services charge for that at that point. But most of them can do a single at a time up to a certain limit.
All right. So once I get all of this data, not just maybe points, but shapes and whatnot into my database, I know SQL Server has a bunch of different inbuilt functions to do different things with, shapes. What kind of functions are these, and when should I use those versus trying to use like either a mapping provider to figure out what to do with my data?
Well, I think for what the geodatabase provides is simple relational operations, like is this point within this polygon? Right? So is this within that state, for instance, or vice versa? Give me all the points that are within a certain zip code.
Yep.
And then you can do a sum on that for a certain attribute and see, well, or the count could give you the population or something like that.
There's also some union
total
functions.
sales per zip code. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one thing that Carl and I had worked on a while ago. Was we had a whole bunch of different regions, and we basically had to join those. And SQL Server would let you select all the regions and then pull it back basically as a single combined polygon, which was pretty cool.
Not just that, but a shape with holes.
You're right. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't just the outline. It was also with holes. You could do like a donut type area, which is really cool.
Yeah. So it gives you all those operations to basically just do aggregating data based on location. But then you still have to do the analysis on it. You have to do like the average or the count or sum, or then maybe take that to the next process. So there's a lot more steps there. And again, you said you need all the data. Some of the stuff what the online tools can do a lot of that for you and automatically give you like analysis based on like what's the income of this area on average for generally based on your store locations, and they can do a lot more data mining that way that might be tougher doing locally. But if it's just for simple location processor distance or within certain areas aggregation, the database does fine. And SQL Server has really, really great support, and there's actually one of the few databases that really understands that the world is round, and that the shortest path is actually the short way and all the way other way around. A lot of them don't actually handle it the right way.
Oh, really?
No, it's most maps I've seen, they treat the Antarctica like this kind of like jagged edge, and then goes straight down along the one edge, straight across and up again. But that whole area doesn't really exist at the bottom, because that's really just where the map ends and then starts again on the other side in the bottom. But that's really one point. Really, Antarctica is like a circle around the bottom.
Yeah.
Right. And SQL Server can actually like understand that. It does add some complexity. But if you go one way, it means the bottom. If you go the other way, it means the top. So you have to also consider what direction your ring goes in. But they can also be neat to use for like everything but Antarctica, for instance, if you want to go the other way around.
Okay, so I should use those functions in my database, and then once that functionality ends in the database, then use the mapping provider for the rest.
You could, yeah.
Okay.
Or you can do it all in the map provider, or you can use the databases in the cloud instead to do it all, right?
Okay.
And then have one place to maintain all your data as authority data, and your clients will pull from that straight up.
Okay. Cool. And then knowing that like zip codes change, boundaries of shapes change, and unfortunately, I live in a zip code that covers 2 cities, which is really annoying, by the way. I always knew like these places existed, and now I live in one, and it's really tough because like I go to different web pages and I type in my zip code and it puts in the wrong city name. So don't do that. Anybody who's listening, don't make assumptions about that. I guess there's zip codes also that cross states, which is just mind boggling to me that the same zip code is in 2 different states. But anyway, talking about how that data actually changes, is there any best practices that you're aware of for dealing with that? Like, do I subscribe to that data so that I know when it changes, or like how does that work?
That's a great question. So dealing with like what we call authoritative data like that, it is a challenge to keep that up to date. And I mean, zip don't change that often, luckily, but they can change, and they do now and then. So I would go to some of the data providers that provide services that connect, and I would pull that in dynamically. If the provider allows you to cache it, it could be beneficial to cache the data and then update on now and then.
So does Esri supply any of that data, or is that something I go to a third party for?
We do have that as services as well online that you can use. Yeah.
Okay. So I could come and look at, like, if I wanted to know zip codes and what the boundaries are, that I would you're the one-stop shop then?
It could be, yeah.
Okay, cool.
So how is development for mapping different when you're developing for web versus when you're doing it for a mobile client like UWP or Xamarin or iOS?
Well, it doesn't have to be different. It can work both ways, but I think when you're talking about mobile development, one thing you really have to think about now is your data connection. So typically when you use JavaScript, you're typically working with an online, always connected app for the most part. So how do you do that when you can't rely on your connection? You can't have imagine your Drive application where you need to go somewhere and the internet connection drops because you're out in the middle of nowhere and suddenly you can't give you directions anymore. Like that, of course, shouldn't be allowed to work. So you need to be able to run something offline, and with mobile devices, that definitely becomes an issue, right? So be able to cache data on the device that of course can add some complexity if it's an app is often going to be used in areas where you can't guarantee a connection. So that's definitely something that you have to think about. Does the API provide those kind of functionalities? Like on Windows, you can download the maps offline for certain states at a time. You can go in and pick and take them offline, and it can actually do some kind of routing in that case. I believe traffic then doesn't work. You can't get routing based on traffic because that's real time.
Right.
But you still get a route.
What was the traffic yesterday?
Yeah. Some servers do provide that with historical traffic data, right? So you can predict what it might be.
Yeah.
But of course, accidents can't really.
Yeah, Google is just horrible at that, by the way. So now that I live in a city with just tons and tons of traffic, some of the worst in the country, I go in there to figure out, like, okay, what is like the average drive time between these 2 points, and Google Maps will tell me, like, for me to get to work, it will say, oh, it's going to take somewhere between, if I do like a future, like if I do, what is it right now? It tells me. But if I say, what is it going to be tomorrow at 3, even though it has average historical data, it goes, oh, between somewhere between 35 minutes and 2 hours. I'm like, yeah, thanks, Google. That's totally what I was looking for. Luckily, Waze is a little bit better. Waze always underestimates it a little bit, but at least I can add in a little fudge factor. But yeah, so just
at least Google is not wrong.
Sure. Right. Yeah, sure. Well, I can answer any math problem. It's somewhere between negative
plus
smallest
and minus
number.
infinity.
Yeah, plus and minus infinity, or more or less. Yeah. Right. And maybe it's imaginary. I don't know. We're probably still wrong, Carl. There's some mathematician listening who's just like, oh, they forgot about complex numbers or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Negative I. Or
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Anything else that we didn't talk about that you wanted to make sure you talked about?
No, I think put a map in your app. I think one thing I do have, one of my experience on some of the best mapping apps I've seen.
Yeah,
didn't have a map in them. I think that's kind of thought provoking.
Okay.
I know, but if you really know how the app works, there's a bunch of mapping stuff going on under the covers that helps you drive through the experience. And that, for instance, an example is a transit app. You're getting from A to B using the transport system. You might not actually need a map.
Yeah, it tells you to get on this train. Yeah.
Right, but all that is powered by it. Giving a map might just confuse the whole experience. It can give you they give you an option to actually see it on a map if you want to see, but generally it's not necessarily that. So I think that sometimes you have to think about, do you want a map in your app? Is that really necessary, right? Or then give them an option to help support a certain workflow that you're trying to show. So I think that's something to think about. Is a map really needed, or can I just use all the spatial analysis tools that I have available to maybe just drive through that and figure that out for you?
Yeah. Or like when I'm walking and I have the map, tell me the direction. It says in 200 feet, turn left, which I never quite trust because it's never that great at knowing which direction I'm going, especially in big cities. But I've been trying to do that a little bit more, because the worst thing is that I just walk like an extra block. But you're right, taking the map out of the equation, if we can get really good at what we're doing, the map was really just a crutch for what was actually going on, which was navigating me.
But again, you bring up a good point. Often when I drive with my navigation app, it will say like in 300 feet, turn right. And then in 200 feet, there's another side street. And you're not really sure. Like,
I know.
You don't check the map. You say, oh, there's another street I have to pass first before I get there. So sometimes it does help. And that's I'm not saying you shouldn't put a map in your app if that doesn't make sense. Or if it does make sense, right? But it's just something to question yourself.
So. Yeah. It should. In that case, it should almost say something. It should say, I don't know, somehow warn you that there's another one.
Second right.
Yeah, your second right. Don't take the first one. That's not the right one. There's a place I'm sure there's lots of places, but I remember a place in Wisconsin like that where you'd see half the cars, because I knew they were following a GPS, they would turn the wrong way, and I knew to watch for them because I did it once, and then I actually saw one of those types of intersections here recently, so I can totally understand what's going on there.
You could have said like after the gas station.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's funny that there is like a big difference between how we explain directions to, human to human versus map to human. Yeah, if there's like major landmarks, so yeah, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement there in the map saying, at the McDonald's, take a right. And they just totally ignore that right now. But McDonald's.
But then the McDonald's closed last week, and then your host.
Well, that's why I asked about updating data.
Exactly.
It has to be like some kind of push service. The second that McDonald's goes out of business and they pull down the arches, Esri better let me know.
Yeah, having up to date data is a challenge. Crowdsourcing is an interesting thing there, right? Where you can have the first person who realizes that McDonald's isn't there anymore could have pushed that in, but that also makes you question the data, like how authoritative is it? Is it fake, or is it actually true? How do you validate that for crowdsourcing?
Because Waze lets you do that, but I have seen roads that were closed that it didn't tell me were closed, and when I do see that it's closed, I always wonder, like, I wish you just tell me, like, was that 100 people that reported that, or was it just one person who you might not trust?
Yeah.
So, because I always worry about that in the morning with the traffic, like that somebody is going to manipulate that, because if I wanted to get to work real quick, I could just go into Waze and basically take my whole path and like mark all the roads as closed, so that nobody gets routed on there, and then I could get to work really fast.
That is really clever.
I'm sorry,
really
I'm diabolical.
Yeah. I'm actually amazed how good Waze is at letting you know about a parked car on the side of the street. Like it's
well, they are reputation based. So I have heard about the police trying to game it, where they basically put fake cop cars all over the map. But the thing is, they don't have any reputation. They haven't built up any reputation, so Waze doesn't believe them. But I have reputation. I've been thanked, dozens of times across like dozens of different incidents for like police and things like that. So I'm sure, they don't tell you what your reputation is, but I'm sure Waze trusts my information because they've had it independently verified so many times. So I could probably, if I need to get to work one time, I could probably mark something as closed. But then after that, they're not going to trust me again because everybody's going to put in opposite information. Mm-hmm. So, okay, Carl, what is the dev tip of the week?
So this week I have two. The first one is from the blog of Matthias Huckstra.
Okay.
And he works at Microsoft focusing on enterprise apps. And so he has a solution. If you want to have a UWP app, but not put it in the store, if you want to sideload it, one of the things that you lose is you lose the ability for the store to auto-update your app when you put out a new feature. So he actually provided a solution. When you sideload an app, you also get extra API capabilities. There's certain things that you're allowed to do in a sideloaded app because not everybody's going to get it. You're going to only put it there purposefully. Mm-hmm. So one of the things you can do is you can actually update yourself. There's APIs that will let you do that. So he actually wrote some code to show you how to implement that. So you can put a file out on a web share somewhere and be able to detect that and use that to update yourself.
Okay, that's
so that
really
is
cool.
really cool.
Yeah, so
that is
so
really
if I'm
cool.
understanding correctly, I could download an AppX package, and starting with the anniversary update, I can just double click on that and actually install that. So does it work in that scenario?
I believe it would.
Okay,
It-
because that's
almost
really
like-
awesome.
It's almost like you can build your own store with this. Like you have your apps update themselves.
Yeah.
The project that he's doing this for, I don't know if you saw his earlier blog post why he's doing this, but he's working on trying to put cheap Lumia 640s around the house as little home automation controllers.
Okay.
So like a light switch, and so the $30 light switch that's always online, but it could also be a camera, it could also be a music player, it could be an intercom.
Oh, that's such a good
But
point. Yeah.
It's a really neat idea, and just screw it in the wall instead of a light switch,
Yeah.
and have the little charger on behind it.
Because a Zigbee light switch is going to cost you $35 as it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, why not throw a whole phone there? That's funny. It kind of shows you, like, you know, how inexpensive that technology is for what you get.
But then when you update all your switches, that gets tricky. So this is a really neat way to do it.
Yeah, you could just do like the VNext through like AT&T or Verizon. You could just pay $1,000 a month and then you're all set.
Oh, I mean, updating the app itself.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So the next thing I have is something for .NET from Rudy Wynn. He has prolific Windows Phone apps experiences. And the problem he's trying to solve is pluralization. So how do you handle it? Not just like in a language, but kind of all the languages. For example, like you might just do like, if it's 1 day ago, 0 days ago, or 2 days ago, well, those are different edge cases that affect the pluralization. So you might have a string that contains like the number that you want to swap out. So you could just put it in, but how do you know which form of it to use? Much less like in Polish, there's not just 2 plural forms, there's 4. So he wrote this open source project to handle pluralization for, I don't know, it's not quite all the languages, but it's definitely, I'm looking at the list, estimating, it's like 50, 60 languages.
Yeah, no idea how
that are supported.
Yeah.
And it covers the platforms for Silverlight, Windows Phone, WinRT, UWP, ASP.NET, Core, .NET apps, Xamarin. So essentially anything you can write in .NET, you can get this pluralization. And it is different than if you're using the Humanizer open source project. These are a little bit different than how they're doing the pluralizations. This one's very specific, and it covers, like we said, literally dozens of languages.
Yeah. Yeah, it really bothers me. Like, he's got the example here where you say 3 item, and then in parentheses it says S, so it's like item or items. And he says that's lazy. And it's like, that one doesn't bother me too much. What really bothers me is whenever it says 1 items. You know, I see that all the time, and it was like, really? Like, you're not even like, it's like step 1, put parentheses around it. Step 2, go out and use Rudy's library here, because it's just the right thing to do. It's gonna make your users trust you more because it's gonna look like a more polished application. So that's another good find. Okay, here we go. There's a game that we play, Morton, that is what you have to do is you have to pick a number between 1 and 4 inclusive, and then you have to answer a question.
Hey, well, let's go all the way to 4.
Number 4, good choice. Would you rather have to swallow a tiny worm with every meal you eat, or let 10 flies walk over your every meal for an hour before you eat it?
Oh, can't have both.
And we're done here.
That's a good question.
I think if you do the second one, I think you will have both.
That's very true. So I'll go with number 1. I'll go with just the worm. Then.
Yeah, I'm thinking the worm because like it's just a worm. The second one,
just protein.
Yeah, stuff is gonna happen. Like it's not gonna be a good situation. Okay, Carl, pick a number.
I'll take number 2.
Number 2. Would you rather pick a carpet clean with tweezers instead of vacuuming, or trim the lawn? Actually, did we just do this one? I think we just did this one. I'm going to pick a different one. I'm crossing that off. It's going in the archives, never to happen again. Okay. Oh, this is good. Would you rather have the ability to erase memories from your own mind or the ability to erase memories from someone else's mind?
Well, if I go and do it to myself, I will be deluded and happy all the time. Whereas if I do it to somebody else, I might have guilt about it. So I will erase my own.
Okay. Very insightful, Carl. I guess I'm pretty diabolical, so I'm going to erase other people's minds.
Yeah, you could just go and make the other people happy because they don't know all the bad things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not as evil as you, Jason.
Yeah.
I think we have that part down.
Yeah, and then when something embarrassing happens, you can just bloop, stricken from the record, you know? It just people forget about it. But that's pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty like blank check as well. I mean, it says to erase memories from, I mean, that's like any memory.
I guess I was assuming also just maybe one other person's. So I guess if it's from everybody's, one time.
Oh, I see how it is. there's no take backs. No, you can change your answer. But yeah, it's any memory from any person, and it's like forever too. So this could be at any point.
That is a pretty blank check. So yeah, that would be a huge power.
Yeah.
I'm amazed there's not a novel character yet that does this.
Yeah, this would be a good superpower.
Yeah,
that's almost like on Heroes, the guy who could travel through time.
Yeah, or maybe
it's almost the same thing.
Hero.
It's almost like the guy from like Jessica Jones too, similar to that. Yeah, I don't know if there's probably a comic book of the guy that has this, or girl. Oh,
we don't remember. He erased our memory.
Yeah, I forgot. Somebody had this ability, I'm sure. Yeah, maybe lots of people have it. I don't know. That's something to think about. Anyway, so Morten, where can people find you if they want to learn more?
Well, they can find me on Twitter, .Morten, spelled out. I'm on GitHub too, under the same.
Okay.
If you guys want to look at our SDKs as well, we have .NET and we just have a beta now for Xamarin as well. That's almost done.
Okay.
So you get the same mapping API across everything, and that will be developers.azure.com. You can go and get the SDK there. Several parts of it is free to use. Some of it costs, from more advanced features, cost a little extra for licensing, but definitely go and check out the beta if you guys want. It's going to be in NuGet as well very soon.
Awesome. Very cool. Carl, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Carl Schweitzer.
And you can find me at ytechie.com or on Twitter at twitter.com/ytechie. So Morten, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about mapping. It's a very cool topic.
Thank you for having me.